Next up, I'd like to welcome Dylan Hall. Dylan Hall is the acting coordinator for the co-responder programs at Ambulance Victoria. With almost 10 years experience working with Ambulance Victoria as an ALS paramedic, he prides himself on delivering a high level of patient-centred care and clinical excellence. It's a strong passion for pre-hospital education and training, and he brings extensive training and assessment knowledge, particularly in the community and first responsive fields. Dylan is a strong leader with an excellent frontline management and leadership qualities, which have assisted him in creating many relationships with key internal and external stakeholders. Could you please all welcome Dylan Hall from Ambulance Victoria.
So my name is Dylan Hall. I'm the coordinator for the co-responder programs with Ambulance Victoria. My background, as you've just heard there, is around community and first responder programs. So I've been heavily involved in that in the last 5 years of my service with Ambulance. And before that, I was a paramedic educator and a clinical instructor with Ambulance. So today I'd just like to talk to you a little bit about dealing with emergencies. So emergencies that will happen at your facilities, some of the things that come up, some of the questions we get asked, and how we can hopefully allow you to deal with those a little bit. So this morning I'll go over what happens during a 000 call, so the process behind that, who's involved, how an ambulance gets dispatched to your site or your organisation, what information paramedics receive. So as we heard earlier, we do get a little bit of a heads up before we head to a job, so we do get some data on information about the scene we're heading to. And finally, what can you do to assist us on scene once we arrive and those sort of things. So what happens at the start? Ideally, you've recognised that there's been a critical incident or a medical emergency that's occurred inside of your operational facility. You've identified the need for a 000 call, so whether that's being that you have identified someone's in trouble, someone's injured, someone's sick, you've identified that, you've passed that on, you've spoken to your duty manager, the duty manager is aware of that and has made arrangements in the background for what's continuing. From our end, what happens then is you have decided to make a 000 call. So the 000 call process, as you can see there, in Victoria, goes through Telstra. The call taking process will then go to ESTA. ESTA will put you through to the ESTA call taker for ambulance. Based on the information that they receive from you during that process, ESTA will deem the job as a code 1, code 2 or code 3 priority, and that just determines how quickly an ambulance would be dispatched to that scene. So whether or not we come with the lights and sirens, what backup we have, how many ambulances would be dispatched. So in Victoria we have multiple platforms of emergency dispatch. So we have our mobile intensive care platform, we have our advanced life support platform, and we also have our single responder platforms as well. They are our main road resources, and if required for some of these further out, more regional areas, we also have HEMS or the helicopter availability as well. That all gets determined by the call taking process and the dispatcher. From there, the ambulance will be dispatched to the scene. You'll hear the sirens blaring, everyone gets all happy, off we go. Once the crew has been alerted and the job's been made in the system, please stay on the phone line. It's really important because the call taker will stay on the phone with you and they'll actually keep you updating them on certain parts of the process. So that can be, once they've identified, say for example, if a patient is in cardiac arrest, there's a worst case scenario, they will prompt you through the process around CPR and what to do. They'll alert you that obviously ambulance is on the way. They'll try to make you as calm as possible. So please try and stay calm. Please follow their instructions and speak clearly and concisely. The chain of survival is something really important. I'm not going to talk about that for a long period of time with you guys because it's something that obviously is drummed into you with all your training. It's something that often gets forgotten in this process. So you guys actually tick off the first 4 chains of that, believe it or not. It's really important. The only thing I come in and do at the end there, if I was attending one of these medical events, would be the ALS portion of that and transport that patient to hospital. So the bulk of the work and where all the, survivability from one of these catastrophic incidents comes from is in those first 4 steps. So you guys have a direct impact on that patient's outcome in that respect. So the quicker you can recognise that someone needs assistance You have access to getting them the help, whether that's through generic first aid on scene or if it is requiring ambulance support, etc. You've got that ability. And then you can intervene with CPR and defibrillation if it's required. So once the job's gone through, what happens from my end? So I get a lovely alert, as I said, via my pager and radio. Again, the bane of my existence, it still haunts me on leave. The little picture you can see there on the right of the screen there is what we call a mobile data terminal. That's what we have in all of our vehicles. So this is basically what happens. The job comes through. If we're at a branch or out of a local vicinity, our pager and radio will go off. We'll respond to that particular call with a dispatcher. When we hop in our vehicle, this is what will be seen on our screen. It gives us some very, I guess, I'll say minimal information, and it's information to sort of, take with a grain of salt, because we get a little bit of bias when we read these data terminal spit outs, and then we turn up and it's something totally different. So we do have to be careful with that. But the example that we have here is we'd get a generic description of the job. So it's a cardiac arrest, it's a car accident, whatever it is, a sick person. We get the location, the ID of where we're going to, our dispatch codes and those sort of things. Down the bottom of that, you can see there that it actually shows you, and it has some little abbreviations there. So these are the notes that the call taker has typed onto that screen for us directly. So as I said before, it's really important to stay on the phone and to keep talking to that call taker, because this is the information they're getting. The important part for us is any special information that we require. So for example, if something was to happen right here, right now, we'd want to know where we are. Okay, so yeah, we can go, we're at the LSV building on the boulevard in Port Melbourne, but it's a really big complex. And like anything, we're going to park at the very front and then go, where do we go? So the more detail you can give that person, the better it is for us on road, especially for someone like myself. If I'm responding in a single responder platform, I'm actually not allowed, and I'm looking over here at a colleague, I'm not allowed to actually use that item whilst I'm driving because it's considered like a mobile phone. Okay, so I get updates via my dispatcher. So anything you've told them, it'll alert me and ping and say, there's an update. I ask what that update is and they'll say, you need to go up to level 1, you're heading to the back room, someone will meet you there. Fantastic, I know where I'm going. It's really important too if it's, say, on a beach. So if you have pulled someone for life savings on the beach, where to enter from. So multiple entrance points can be an issue, especially when we have multiple crews coming, because we might get all pinged to the same location. However, for whatever reason, the GPS has decided it wants to take us another way, and they end up 100 metres down the road, and then they have to run up through the sand or whatever it is. So it can be quite tricky locating these patients. So the better information you can give us at that call-taking procedure, the better it is for us. So how can you assist us? As I said, remaining calm is really important, especially in a facility where you have other bystanders around. I like to think of it as a duck on the water. So they're cruising along on top, but underneath they're going 100 miles an hour. If you can do that, remain calm, talk your way through things, tell people what's happening, tell people and your staff what you need or what you require. Attend to the patient's needs. So obviously if the patient has gone into cardiac arrest, there's no point going through these sort of dot points and trying to ascertain what's happening, talking to these people, organising triple O, doing all that when no one's actually jumping up and down on the patient's chest. So make sure your patient is being dealt with as well. I know it sort of sounds like common sense, but when you've got that fight or flight response going and it's not something you deal with every day, little things get missed. And I think, as you'll see in a minute, the more you can train for the unexpected, or the more training you have ingrained in your body, muscle memory does become a huge part when it comes to these time-critical emergencies. Answer the questions from the call taker as best you can. Once we're on site as well, obviously the paramedic crew are probably going to ask you for a story or to find out what's happened, especially if the patient is unresponsive or unconscious. Please provide us as much detail as you can, how they were found, if they were found in the water, in the change rooms, just on the floor, in the gym, wherever it is, what you've done, and how they've responded to that treatment. So if it's just a medical episode, let's say you've got a patient who's a known diabetic, they have a hypoglycemic attack, so their blood sugar goes really low, you manage that patient, they start comprehending and talking to you again. On our arrival, they're sitting up talking to you. You can tell us what you've done for that patient, and that gives us a much better understanding of where the patient was at the start and where they are now, and then how that's going to affect our management moving forward as well. The call taker and paramedics are here to assist you and also the patient, so we're not just there for the patient. As we heard earlier, quite often if there is a critical incident, we will come back to the scene. It might not be on that exact day, but we will organise a debrief with you. We are more than happy to. We are more than happy to answer questions when we have a little bit of time up our sleeve post the event to come back and process everything with you and provide that support. One thing that can really help, and it's kind of common sense, but to send a staff member out the front of the building or your location to wave the ambulance down for two reasons. One, when we turn up, depending on what type of job it is and where we're going, we may have a large amount of equipment we're bringing in. It also makes it more expedient for us to get to that location. Like I said, if it was in this building, up to the end of the building, follow the corridor, that gives us a general direction. The other one too is often we know if there's multiple crews coming. So if we're dispatched as a single car dispatch, we'll say, yep, take us up to the patient, no worries. If there's extra crews coming, we'll say, there's another crew coming, can you wait for them as well and direct them when they arrive? The other thing to remember with a lot of these time critical emergencies, especially cardiac arrest, is you're not just going to get an ambulance, you're going to get a fire truck as well. So anyone in cardiac arrest or what meets our priority 0 dispatch, so the highest threat to life, will always have an ambulance dispatch as a minimum, usually with 2 mica units or a 2-up mica vehicle, stretcher vehicle. It can automatically dispatch HEMS depending on the distance of that job to timely treatment for that patient. And if you're in the metropolitan Melbourne or on the outskirts of the peripheries and some of our major regional towns, you will also have what we call an EMR response, which is Emergency Medical Response through Fire Rescue Victoria. So they have training, they carry equipment, they will also be coming to these high priority events as well. And 9 times out of 10, they beat the ambulance because they're available, ready to go, and will be on scene. So if they do turn up before us, please don't send them away or think that there's a fire alarm going off. That's what they're there for. They are there to help, and they're really good at their job. They will do CPR, they will do defibrillation, they will help you guys through your process. We will turn up, and together and collaboratively, we will do our best to get that patient the best outcome clinically. How can you help outside of the event? It's really simple, and it's stuff you already do, but it's probably something that needs to be taken. Once you've been involved in one of these events, you'll always look back at your training and go, oh, I wish I did that a little bit more. It's great to muck around with your mates and have a laugh and that when you're training, and please don't take it the wrong way, because we all do it. I do it personally as well. But the more you can train in scenarios, the more you can train with other resources and other organisations, the better your response will become. And some of these big things that I've been involved in with some of the major incidents in Victoria in the last couple of years, if I hadn't have done training with FRV or Fire Rescue Victoria and VicPol, I can tell you on that day I would have felt well and truly out of sorts and had no idea what was going on. So the more you can be involved with your local responders, whether that's community responders, whether it is ambulance, whether it is Fire Rescue Victoria or just internally with LSV, the more you can make those scenarios lifelike, the more you do them, and the equipment that you use your real equipment. Like actually put someone in the water and pull them out of the water, put them on the side, towel them off, set up like you would for your CPR, but then move over to a mannequin. Obviously, we don't want anyone electrocuting anyone by accident, but those sort of things, it makes it lifelike, it builds that muscle memory, and it really helps for that really difficult time when you are faced with one of these emergencies. Remain current in your qualifications, so if you are due for your 12-month refresher for your CPR or your advanced resus, please keep current with that, keep up to date with it, do a little bit of research, reach out and speak to other people outside of the industry or industry experts. There's always something that's available to improve you as a responder. And finally, remember, stay calm, and don't be Beaker, because if you're Beaker, everyone else around you will be Beaker. So it's a little inside joke with the ambulance, but remain calm, do the best you can do, and probably one of the biggest things that stood out to me in my career so far is when you are at one of these events, any CPR or resuscitation is better than none at all. Okay, so if it feels like you're doing it wrong or you're not sure, you're better off having a crack at it, so to speak, than not doing anything at all. Okay, that's it. Thanks, guys.